Diaspora UA welcomes you on our channel. Today we have with us retired US Navy officer, ex-chief of staff for the NATO military mission, Yuri Tabach. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you for inviting me.
You are in Ukraine now as a volunteer with your humanitarian mission and watching the war in Ukraine very closely. Since you serve in US Army for almost 30 years, how would you describe the war from your military standpoint, and how would you describe the situation right now in Ukraine?
Well, the situation, I think, is changing, slightly changing, because Ukrainians are starting to act more confident. They're working more in unison with others and among themselves. The command is very solid, and they're also already, it's too early to say they're going into the counteroffensive, but there are certain counterattacks. They're able to encircle some of the large Russian units. They were able to cut them off from their supply lines, and they're using the equipment, the very little bit of equipment, the heavy equipment that we have provided the Ukrainians with, like HIMARS and howitzers, that they're reaching out to the Russians and setting them in panic, destroying their headquarters, destroying their supply lines, destroying their reinforcements, and their equipment and their troops. So we see that Ukrainians are able to fight in several fronts, in the south, in the west at the same time, and hopefully this will accelerate, and they will continue to keep the initiative for their advances. But they're still waiting for the lend-lease. They're still waiting for the heavy equipment from Europe and from the United States, so they can finish this murder of their nation and stop that and push the Russians back and protect their country. So now it's really up to us to provide them with such equipment, with such instruments, as quickly as possible.
So what's the main problem in Ukrainian army right now? It looks like all these billions that President Biden announcing, they're not reaching Ukraine. It looks like they don't have even enough ammunition, despite all of this help being announced.
No, in certain channels they're working and they're getting their ammunitions and they're getting the right stuff, and they're conducting covert operations. They're conducting operations deep in the Russian occupied territory in Crimea. They're reaching out. We're not sure how they're doing it or with what they're doing, or at least, I mean, public is not aware, and we shouldn't be aware of it. It should be always a surprise for the Russians. But there are also a lot of confusion, a lot of political games played by the Europeans, by the United States, and within the Ukrainian. There's still a political struggle for power. Nobody canceled that out just because the war started. So bureaucracy, corruption, all these things are present at one point or the other. For instance, we just gave $3 billion more to Ukraine, and Ukrainians are very happy about it. But it doesn't include heavy equipment, doesn't include any of the offensive weaponry. Therefore, Ukrainians cannot really start the counteroffensive. It also says that it's a new equipment that the Ukrainians have to order it from our manufacturers. So at best, the Ukrainians will see some of it in a year, 2 or 3, or maybe even 5 years. So by that time, when we offer certain things, or we give certain things, it doesn't mean it's right now and it's right there. But there's several like a presidential drawdown is working, but lend-lease is not working at all. I mean, it's zero. One of the former ambassadors to Ukraine, U.S. ambassadors, announced here that it's a symbolic law. Lend-lease is a symbolic law. I don't know what it means, symbolic law, but and so forth. There's but Ukrainian spirit is high. The troops' morale is high because they just were able to break the first line of defense in the major city of Kherson, and are able to encircle the Russian troops. So they're showing a lot of progress with whatever little that they have. So the morale is high, and the people seeing that things are improving. And again, this war in the beginning, they had shortages of fuel. There was kind of a little bit of a panic and a down feeling that the Russians are advancing fast and they don't have enough strength to stop them. But now everything is functional. Police is working, firefighters department is working. There's electricity. There's metro is working. Buses are working. Hospitals are working. Everything is kind of working normal, considering that there is a full-scale war going on. So infrastructure is working. The government is working. The Congress is working, and a lot of businesses are coming back. So even the construction sites I see now starting to work a little bit, but work maybe a few days a week, but working. So, and a lot of refugees that left Ukraine are starting to come back. So now all they need is just enough instruments to push the Russians out of here and get to normal life and progress and prosper.
Wow, it's really amazes me how propaganda can work. And here a lot of people think that all this money going to Ukraine, and they are going, but they make Ukraine wait for a couple of years. It doesn't make any sense, because we know the senator who initiated lend-lease, even in April he said that we can, the main reason for this lend-lease is to expedite the military help, and Ukraine can get whatever they need without any delays. And now we hear that we have to wait a couple of years. Even a few days can make a difference, and can be crucial to the victory. I think it's really sad that mainstream media doesn't pay attention what's really going on there. Let me ask you something different, if you don't mind. We came from the same country to the United States, and we were escaping USSR regime, socialist, how they called it. But we all know how the things turn out in USSR. It was dictatorship and deaths of millions during this regime. Do you see any similarity with political situation now in United States and USSR? What do you think?
We're all, those of us who lived through it, we all understand that we don't want free housing, we don't want free schooling, we don't want free medicine. There's no such thing as a free lunch. That all it ends up is in corruption and degradation of those systems. And eventually, because under socialist structure, and it doesn't matter, I know the university professors in the United States, and 90% of the students now are saying, well, it's different, we're going to be like Switzerland, we're going to be like Sweden. No, you're not going to be like, we're not going to be like Switzerland. Sweden, it's totally different. The countries, totally different ideas, and it doesn't matter that they're better than ours. We were the most advanced country for a long time. And everybody were, were our mentors. I mean, we were their mentors, and we were setting up the example and the plank for those countries to reach. So, it's going to be different. Yeah. The Chinese said it was going to be different. The Vietnamese said, the North Koreans said it's going to be different. All of them, the Syrians, everybody said that it was different. It's not different. It all ends up, the system collapses, and they start to blame people. They start to look for the internal enemies of the people. And it ends up. And it reminds you, in the Soviet Union and the Bolshevik coup d'etat, it wasn't the peasants and the soldiers and the sailors who did that. It was the intellectuals. It was university professors. The students were out there rioting. And Lenin himself was what? He was a lawyer and a journalist. Trotsky was a publisher. The father of the modern-day KGB was a nobleman from Poland, Felix Dzerzhinsky, and so forth and so forth. There were no peasants there. It was intellectuals who created, and Castro was not a peasant; he was a lawyer. You know, Pol Pot, the most bloodiest one, was a lawyer, trained in France, highly educated. Mao Zedong was not a peasant. You know, and we can go on. Ho Chi Minh was not a peasant. He was also a lawyer, also educated, I think, in France. So we can go on and go on with naming the tyrants that were there. In Syria, you know, Assad is a doctor. He's an optometrist. You know, in the Soviet Union, the Bolsheviks, the first thing they did, they said that the enemy number one were gendarmes, was the police.
Defund police.
Police first, right? Who's going to patrol the streets and is going to be, you know, watch for the safety on the streets? It's going to be revolutionary sailors, drunk, disobedient, murderous, looting. Antifa and Black Lives Matter will patrol the streets. Remind you something? Let them control the city and watch that. And then what do? Well, we have to let all the criminals out of the prison because they're socially close to us, to the revolutionaries, right? So now Soros realizes it, and he puts all the DAs, not politicians, but the DAs in power. Like in my hometown of Philadelphia, DA has let all the criminals out, basically, and 500 cases against the police. So, and then what do we need to do? Lose the war. You know, the Bolsheviks said, we got to lose the war. Lose the war in order to start a bigger war. Guess what just happened? We lost the war in Afghanistan, and we won the war, and the bigger war started right here in Europe, in the heart of Europe, in Ukraine. So, I mean, I see a lot of similarities with this. And now, looking for the enemy, you know, the economy is bad. The wars are breaking out everywhere. Who do we blame? We have to find an internal enemy of the people. Well, I guess President Biden has found them. He just announced that Republicans are fascists. Everybody who supports the Republican Army are half fascists. Well, so we keep waiting. And we can see that our FBI, our famous and the most respected organization for years, I wanted to be an FBI agent, is now corrupt. And what they did to General Flynn, and they're weaponized now by raiding a former president quarters, his house. It's unprecedented in the United States, like a banana republic now. Have to destroy the former, man in power, or the one that's threatening you in the future, the opponent. We have to destroy the opponent, just like Putin's way of dealing. That's what they do. This is what the left. I mean, you can call them whatever you want: Marxists, communists, Bolsheviks, leftists, Marxists. But that's what they do. They're all the same. It's all the same material. They hate the capitalists, and we now see that in universities, in our Ivy League schools, they're walking around the kids. Well, they're not kids anymore. Some of their peers are in the Army and the Navy and the Marine Corps. They're walking around and they're screaming "rah rah rah" down with the capitalism. You know, so I can see a lot of those similarities and a lot of the threats to our nation, to our country, where the professors are, you know. In my personal experience, we have a friend. Her kid goes to university, Temple University. She was in class, and the professor said, "You see how good Biden is? He is for giving you $10,000 for your education, right?" So one kid got up and said, "But professor, I mean, there is no such thing as a free lunch." So he starts yelling and screaming at him, saying that Trump is an asshole, Trump was this, Trump was that. What are you talking about? Biden is the best thing that ever happened to this country. And the whole class was quiet, and they didn't know it. So she videotaped it. She videotaped it on her iPhone, but she's afraid to disclose it because she thinks she's going to be in a lot of trouble at the university, and all she wants to do is just finish the university. So there's a lot of this going on. Or that has a lot of similarities and threats, and we see the censorship that's going on. And we can see with Facebook, Zuckerberg just came out, how the FBI influenced him to play, to swing the vote.
Yes.
To hide evidence, to do a lot of things like that. And it's more and more happening in our country, unfortunately.
I think the same as the Soviet Union made propaganda and gave only half of the information what's going on in the world. We didn't know what's going on in different countries because media was controlled by a government. Similar is right now. It's amazing, but it's very similar in university in the United States. I noticed some professor, for example, denying Holodomor, genocide in Ukraine that had been in 1932 when millions dies, from 6 to 9 to 12 millions people die, and we still have probably witnesses, a lot of movies, books written, but he's denying
There's
genocide.
Never been any kind of good argument that said the Soviets intentionally, or let alone Stalin, intentionally starved people. That is, in fact, the truth is the opposite. The Soviets ended the problem of famine.
Professor, he's saying that the opposite is true. But I just wanted to touch this historical event as the fact that of similarity what we have right now in United States, because how did it happen? It was Soviet Union kind of IRS was coming to Ukrainian, and they were taking all harvest they were growing during summers, but they were taking like everything 100%, and basically millions died because they didn't have any food. They didn't have nothing to feed their children, and it was a big tragedy. And we hear that President Biden hiring another 87,000 IRS agents, and he's trying to arm them. He is arming them. It's very similar. It's if you know, if Facebook was suppressing, censoring information, history can repeat itself. I think it's.
Well, it does, because we don't learn anything from it. And you're absolutely right. What they're trying to do is destroy small and middle-sized businesses, just globalize everything. And those IRS agents will go after small and medium-sized businesses. I can assure you of that, because small and medium-sized businesses, the people there are the most free, loving people. They don't depend on anyone. They don't depend on the government handouts. They don't depend on, they only depend on themselves, and they serve their customers that they know personally. Like a truck driver who owns a truck, like a small store, a restaurant. That's what they're going to go after. They're going to go after the middle class in the United States, and bankrupt us. Get rid of us. This is what they're trying to do. It's absolutely Soviet style of destruction. I mean, we're kind of at fault ourselves. We're not organized enough. We don't go vote. We don't participate in demonstrations. We don't volunteer for the people we want to elect, or go to election polls. We're not as free or as committed as Democrats are, as socialists are, because they're ideologically, they're students, they're professors. They don't have to go to the factory every day or run a business every day, or movie stars, whatever, the Hollywood, or there's this certain professions that they're involved in. You don't see the electricians that go out, or the plumbers, or the truck drivers, people that work and pay taxes and have to feed their family, or middle class. So, it's partially our fault. I'll give you an example. You know who Alexander Wiedman is? Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Wiedman.
I heard of him.
We basically had similar. He did in the Army, I did in the Navy. He testified in uniform against his commander-in-chief in front of Congress. and he became a Democrat Party big hero. He's written a book. They show him here on TV all the time, and in Ukraine promote him all the time. He in Congress. He said he counseled President Zelensky, Lieutenant Colonel, counsel the president of the country not to get involved in American politics. He said he was offered 3 times a job as a minister of defense in Ukraine. Things, crazy things that he said like that. But he testified against Trump in uniform, which is really not right, because you can't testify or say anything against your commander-in-chief or your commanding officer if you're in uniform. Resign and then say it. But while you're in the service, it's just not right. So anyway, no officer really will shake his hand. And many of his former peers and many of his former commanders did say that he was not an officer. He was a political activist. And he did that in the army, and he was reprimanded several times for that, because we're not supposed to be political in uniform. In any event, they just showed him on CNN. He's commenting on the war in Ukraine. I'm not trying to blow my own horn, but I'm a higher rank than he is. I've been in the military longer. I've been what's considered to be a FAA, foreign aerial officer in this region, longer than he has. I'm here in Ukraine since 2014. I've visited all the fronts here. I know a lot of military people here and a lot of politicians here. But CNN interviews he gives the comments on what's going on in Ukraine from CNN headquarters. Fox News or Newsmax or any of our own channels don't, ask me once at the beginning of the war, gave me 2 minutes. So here I am right here in Ukraine, but yet it's the Wiedemann who, the political activists on the left who gets the spotlight. We're just not I'm not saying that I should be used and they should talk to me, Fox News or Newsmax. I'm saying that we're not using it properly. We're not as organized. We're not as politically astute in a propaganda way as the Democrats, as the left. They're just gurus at it. I'm just giving myself as an example.
Wow. Yeah, I think they should. And this propaganda, right?
Okay, so here's this guy in a suit and tie in CNN headquarters, who's lower ranked than I am, who has not spent any time at the front here, who didn't spend much time in Ukraine, just came, showed his face, promoted his book out of there. But because he testified against Trump, he's famous. He's there. He's on TV. He's on the national TV in the United States. There's something wrong with it.
Of course. And we are in really serious trouble if this will be going on. I saw just a recent speech of President Biden where he called semi-fascist Republican. And we know the Russian propaganda called Ukrainian who love their country, land, flag, and now defend their freedom from invasion. Putin was calling Ukrainian fascist also, and the main reason why he invaded Ukraine was because he wanted to denazify or kill all these fascists. And this is basically how he is justifying the war in Ukraine, killing thousands of children, civilians, military, and there is no sound mind reason fascists exist in Ukraine. And the same in President Biden saying about half of the country here. What we gonna expect next war with Republican here? It's really threatening.
Right. It is. It is. And if we don't get organized and if we don't act properly this November, then, we deserve what we get. What are you going to do? It all depends on each and every one of us.
Yeah, and also CIA director, also I saw the article, he called Republicans the greatest threat to the he ever seen. It's really unbelievable.
Yeah, that's the guy that visited Putin, and that's the guy who was friends with Putin when he was an ambassador to Russia. Yeah, unfortunately, that's the way it is. Well, listen, former CIA chief under Obama was a member of the Communist Party of the United States. So what do you expect?
Yeah, we have to participate and bring all our friends and people who understand. We understand this because we remember all this social regime USSR. It was horrible. It killed 60 million people, civilian. Anybody who wouldn't agree with political government standpoint, whatever you say, you will be not just like now banned from Facebook, but you will be sent to Siberia or killed. And I see it's a very reminds me that, unfortunately.
But they're not lying. What they're saying is true. They're saying that under their new idea of socialism, not like the old one, but new idea, but that there's going to be equality. Everybody's going to get accessible and free medicine, accessible and free education, accessible and free food, accessible and free housing. They're telling the truth because they will always, no matter which system they choose, it will always end up as a gulag. And there you get free housing, you get free food, you get free medicine, you get everything is free there. So, and nobody has guns there except the guards. The guards, only the police has guns, but everybody else doesn't. So they get what they want to do. Eventually they get there, and they're the ones that are first victims of it anyway. So.
Yeah, hopefully that would never happen, but we have to try hard.
Have to work.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time and your help to Ukraine. Just to remind you to support us, please subscribe to channel Tabach and our channel.
Glory to Ukraine, glory to Ukrainian warriors.